A Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens in 1843, is one of the most adapted books in history, attributed to helping popularize the celebration of Christmas. It tells the story of a sad old man, Ebenezer Scrooge, who hates life, hoards money, and uses none of it to help humanity, who is given a miraculous chance to redeem himself after visits from 4 ghosts showing him the past, present, and, if things continue the way they are, the future. Christmas Carol has been read to live audiences by the author himself, adapted for radio, the stage, television, the big screen, podcasts, ballets, comic strips, video games, and even online over a Zoom stream. It has been animated in varying styles, portrayed with varying budgets. It is sometimes meant for the very young and rated G, and sometimes not meant for kids at all and quite R-rated. It has been a holiday favorite movie for many, an annual holiday tradition, and a story portrayed in so many different ways, which is the point of this video. Which Scrooge is the best? Who played the character well? Which was closest to the book, which veered away from the book to do its own thing. Each actor who played Scrooge put their own version of the character, changing it to suit their style, their voice, their abilities, their acting range, which is particularly important considering the extreme change of character that the character goes through. This list is chronological. I will tell you which performances of Scrooge I think are my own favorite and why, but only you can choose who is the best Scrooge because it is very subjective. Not only that, opinions can change as the years roll by, and you may change it up this year and watch the other versions next year. So forgive me if I miss a few, or even a few hundred versions, because it may take hours to go through every rendition of this classic tale, and I can also only comment on the versions I've personally seen. Hopefully, you'll learn a little bit about some of the versions you haven't seen, or maybe some movie trivia along the way about movies you have. So let's take a look at a few of the various adaptations and performances of history's most famous miser-turned-charitable and loving uncle, who eventually learns to keep Christmas as good as anyone in the good old world could. Some runner-ups. Notable Scrooges include the TV version told by Vincent Price. Vincent Price is well known for his horror movies, cheerfully reads this book to us as the narrator, and there is a quite short TV movie rendition of Christmas Carol. It's a little rushed, a little lazily acted in my opinion, but who doesn't want to hear that wonderful Vincent Price voice as he reads to you by the fire? Blackadder's Christmas Carol. Fans of Mr. Bean and Blackadder will love this one. Blackadder is shown his past through his bloodline, present, and a potentially imaginative future. This tale is told on its head, with Blackadder in the beginning being too generous, who comes back to the present to realize he will now be stingy and refuses to even entertain Queen Victoria, who wanted to give him a recognition for his erstwhile generosity. Some animated versions, including one with Alastair Sim reprising his role, this time as the voice actor of Ebenezer. Mickey's Christmas Carol is very short but very sweet. It's filled with the typical humor of Disney cartoons. If you love Disney, this is a must-see. Mr. Magoo, again, if you love the character, you can't miss this version of Christmas Carol, because Mr. Magoo is the perfect Scrooge. He just can't see why he's a miserable miser. Some TV versions include adaptations to fit the cast and plots of each show, such as Roseanne, who is visited by the ghosts of Halloween past, present, and future. American Dad, Family Guy, Aqua Teen Hunger Force all had their own spins on the story. Henry Winkler played Scrooge for a made-for-TV modern adaptation, American Christmas Carol, 1979. Again, several decades old by now, but still a 20th century version. Another includes a version with the man who played Marley, filling the big shoes this time. Ms. Scrooge, 1997, was a version with women playing the infamous miser duo Scrooge and Marley, which was also a modern-day retelling. There are stage performances. I've seen it myself on stage at the Hedgerow Theater in Pennsylvania, a performance my family and I will never forget. At this point, I also want to recommend reading the book as well. It's a short novella, very light, humorous. Dickens is very easy to read. You'll be able to spot all the dialogue and actions of your favorite film versions and spot all the parts that were omitted and other parts that are reading for the first time. Scrooge, 1935, Seymour Hicks. This is the first sound version of A Christmas Carol, starring Seymour Hicks, who had played the role 2,000 times on stage. Sadly, the only surviving prints of this version are very much in terrible shape, but it's still worth watching because you get enough of the images and audio to know what's going on. There are a few strange director choices, such as having Marley invisible, which I think is pretty lazy, and having the Ghost of Christmas Future essentially just be shadows on an already too dark screen. What you get, though, I think, is some of the sweetest displays of Scrooge's changing heart. He grasps his chest, and you can just feel the warmth of his newly warmed heart through the screen as he thanks Marley and company for the chance of redemption. He absolutely delights in tricking Bob before raising his salary. I think the transformation is very clear in this version, ironically, given the screen is so bad. He is at first grouchy, bitter, angry, and then very sullen, very, very sad, as he sees his clerk's family's troubles, including Tiny Tim, and then panic-stricken as he begs for a chance to change it. Then finally, the delight of a newly bright future that will change thanks to his action. A Christmas Carol, 1938, Reginald Owen. If you love the MGM version, please realize this is subjective and don't rush to change the channel. Don't touch that knob, but I do have questions. I wonder, why is Bob Cratchit so well fed when he is supposed to be very underpaid and can barely feed his family? Why is Tiny Tim so full of life here? Why is Scrooge so mean and nasty that you don't even really want to see his redemption? That is a major point. It is very difficult to play this role because you have to have the audience want to watch you redeem yourself. But what I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the movie is meant to show that the world can be very happy, loving, and upbeat despite its problems. And Scrooge is the dark character that cannot see even though it is all around him. His clerk is very happy despite toiling for low pay in a cold office. Tiny Tim is optimistic despite his illness and prognosis. He, as all the Cratchits, see the silver linings in the clouds of which Scrooge could not himself. So tell me if I got the gist of this portrayal correct. I will say, for such a previously crotchety mean old man, Reginald Owen does successfully turn it around and shows his Christmas cheer as he promises the world his benevolence. Scrooge, 1951, Alastair Sim. The 1951 Alastair Sim version might be one of the most popular versions. This is a British movie. It's a fairly dark version, not very bright and cheery. The comments will no doubt tell me, of course, it's not colorful because it's in black and white, but that's not the point. The 1938 MGM version is bright and colorful, also black and white. But look how upbeat everyone is, the lighting, how bright it is. How it shows what could be a very colorful world to contrast Scrooge's dark heart. Whereas this version is visually dark and everything looks dark and the music is never really optimistic. Except for a notably unique song in this one piano tune that Fred's family and friends sing. A tune heard throughout the movie during the happier times. Marley shows Scrooge the homeless woman right outside his window. A woman Scrooge would never have even noticed. A woman who is a member of what he would call the surplus population. Which, by the way, is a horrendous term, because there is no surplus population. There is only mankind, and as Marley says, your fellow man, mankind, should have been his business. He implores Scrooge to realize that his deathbed confession and regret did not end at his death. It actually continues and has and will continue, because all spirits who are regretful that they never helped humanity lament because they realize they should have helped humanity but have lost the power to do so forever. It is as much a bone-chilling scene as the length of Scrooge's chain is ponderous. One notable scene is during Scrooge's redemption when Alastair Sim shines as the penitent, regretful man who knows he has been pig-headed old fool for ignoring his nephew's beloved wife. My favorite part of this movie, though, is the subdued and quiet portrayal of Cratchit. This man is a timid family man, having spent years toiling under Scrooge, who couldn't care less about Bob and his family, or even to heat the workplace. He shows Scrooge, through the ghost of Christmas present, how happy and loving someone can be, and how one can toast the good health of a man who presently doesn't deserve it, who even after protests of his wife insists deserves a toast of good health on Christmas. Scrooge is ashamed to see this and begins to feel sorry here. When Scrooge tells Bob to buy another coal scuttle, this is no trifling detail. This book emphasizes that working conditions during the Industrial Revolution were often dangerous and miserable, thanks to the owners of these companies keeping hazardous conditions and yes, not heating the workplace. Scrooge promises that not only will Bob have money for his family, but will not work in terrible conditions. And this is a pretty big deal. In fact, it's such a big deal that Bob can barely believe it. Watch here the incredible acting ability as Bob is told by his hitherto uncaring and mean boss that he is about to get a raise and is ordered to buy more coal to heat the office. It is entirely in the facial expressions, totally speechless.
I haven't taken leave of my senses, Bob. I've come to them. From now on, I want to try to help you to raise that family of yours. Well, We'll talk it over later, Bob, over a bowl of hot punch. Meanwhile, you just go and put some more coal in that fire. You go straight out and buy a new coal scuttle. Yes, and you do that before you dot another I, Bob Crackit.
In this version, it is Tim who knows where the prize turkey came from. How does he know Scrooge has changed his heart? Because it's Christmas. And he was right. Scrooge, 1970, Albert Finney. In this musical adaptation, Albert Finney plays a high-pitched, hunched-over, mean old moneylender who will confiscate the puppeteer's puppets on Christmas Day if payment is a penny short or a day late. He deplores carollers begging for a penny and gets called Father Christmas. This one is a musical with all original score, so you get to hear new songs if you're tired of hearing the same old Christmas songs. I like the Fezziwig scene in this one with a delightfully original song, December the 25th, sang by a joyous Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig during their half-day festivities on the last day of work before Christmas. I also like the cup of human kindness, which gets Scrooge drunk and happy as he gleefully smashes through his window to fly around town to see Christmas present. When he went to the past to see his lost love, Scrooge, now a wise old man, calls his younger self a fool. Even though he has lost his fondness for romance and relationship, he's been around the block and knows what will win a woman's heart, and he knows by painstaking experience how to lose it. He tells his younger self to say something, go after her, but as the ghost reminds him, these are things that have been and they cannot change. This movie is a bit long. It goes into some parts like Scrooge temporarily getting chained in hell. Marley's a bit strangely acted, and I don't really care for the version. His redemption scene is a few reprises of earlier motifs such as Father Christmas and Thank You Very Much, which was sung earlier when he finally dies in Christmas Future, but who now sing of their thanks to Scrooge, who rips up his debt contracts of every soul who owes Scrooge so much as a penny. They leave it on a high note as Scrooge promises to spend Christmas with his family. One difference in this is Finney, being a younger man, plays himself in the past. Seymour Hicks and Jim Carrey would do the same, but Finney's portrayal of old Scrooge is so different you probably won't even recognize it's the same actor. This version won a Golden Globe for Best Actor and 4 Academy Award nominations, including one for the song Thank You Very Much. Much deserved, as I think you would agree. There is also a 2022 remake of this version, which is now on Netflix. Christmas Carol, 1984, George C. Scott. This is a made-for-TV movie directed by Clive Donner, who was the film editor of the 1951 Alastair Sim. This is one I watch pretty much every year. It used to show every year on Hallmark Channel, but now has so far usually been on YouTube, but also is available on other streaming services. One portrayal I like in this one is Belle, Scrooge's former fiancée. She's a sweet girl who just loved Ebenezer for the man he was, for the man he could be, not ever for the size of his bank account or what his business could become. Ebenezer neglected his love and favored his finances, to the legitimate dismay of this young woman. She is even saddened later on in Christmas Present to hear that her husband had seen Ebenezer at work on Christmas sad and alone. Notable cast includes David Warner, who's often a bad guy, but is instead a man who shows such emotion and depth and heart on his face. In this version, Scrooge is shown some of the people he has thrown out on the streets to see who, what, and where the so-called surplus population is. It is the family of the men and women who toil to make people like him rich, who when seen in real life in the real strife, Scrooge is angry at their squalor in a tunnel when institutions exist. Horrible institutions, which at the time were notoriously terrible. In England, the poor law and the treadmill were laws that banned vagrants, meaning people needed to rent or get mortgages when they couldn't, or they were thrown in prison or in forced labor. Scrooge wonders if they have no resource, and his words are used against him.
Are there no workhouses? Are there no prisons?
Which he had mentioned people like this should go to earlier when asked for a charitable donation. George C. Scott earns his Emmy nomination as he changes from a callous old miser who didn't think twice to destroy a family for a late payment to begging for a chance to show he is not the man he was. Scrooged, 1988, Bill Murray, a modern comedy retelling of the tale, which is now a quarter century old as of this year. But still, it's a 20th century retelling. The Scrooge character is Frank Cross, played by Bill Murray. Some notable differences here is the prominence of the love interest of Scrooge character, who, unlike pretty much any of the other versions, is not long lost. a woman who had not moved on yet and married and had a large family. No, Claire is the second most important character in this version, part of a romantic plot that was expanded at the request of Bill Murray. We do see what she could have become in the Christmas future, though, if things don't change. Some new characters include some delightfully cheery married people who live at the shelter who Scrooge's love interest helps. He sees firsthand these people who he would have considered the surplus population, and how someone with a heart works to be charitable for. In the end, we have a unique redemption that feels real, with words and acting somewhat added by Murray as he talks on camera live to the movie's TV audience where there is a TV, but as he talks to the camera, feels like he's talking to us, the actual movie's actual audience. So it may be one of the redemptions that somewhat breaks the fourth wall, where we at home are spoken to directly and explicitly told to essentially keep Christmas in our hearts. Muppet Christmas Carol 1992. My favorite as of this recording is Muppet Christmas Carol. And do not be fooled by the typical childishness and silliness of Muppets, of which there is plenty in this movie, because the movie plays the story fairly straight for adults and children alike. Michael Caine, in fact, refused the role if Scrooge was not to be played seriously, saying he will not wink, he will not do anything Muppety. He treated every Muppet as a fellow actor, just as if he was playing for the Royal Shakespeare Company. Those are his words. Scrooge's family and previous love interests are humans, while many of the major characters are Muppets, including the narrators, the ghosts, Jacob and Robert Marley, I assume a nod to Bob Marley. Who else but Fozzie to play, of course, Fozziwig. The music is fantastic all the way through, from Marley's ghostly visit to the Ghost of Christmas Present cheerily singing that Christmas is wherever you find love, to the absolutely wonderful, heartwarming music of Scrooge's redemption, Faithful Heart, kicked off when the old man gets a solitary gift, an incredible act of kindness, of which you will witness one of the most believably acted emotions of gratitude you'll ever see on the screen.
A gift? A gift for me? Thank you. Thank you. 50 times.
A Christmas Carol, 2009, Jim Carrey, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Now, I normally don't care for CGI too much, but I mostly dislike it in live actions where actual stunts and practical effects should have been used. But I give a pass to entirely CGI animated movies because it's just another animation style, similar to Polar Express. This movie may be notable for its ability to use animation to show what could not be shown in live action movies, or not shown well anyway. So in this case, it is an example of CGI done right. The only thing I kind of dislike is making Scrooge so physically repulsive when it's actually his actions that should be repulsive. In fact, I like the portrayals like Sim and George C. Scott and realize they can even laugh as they read their lines because they don't need to look so horrible, when it is just their actions that speak for how horrible he is. Their rejection of humanity is the repulsive nature, not necessarily their looks or even their demeanor. But the movie gets the story right and uses the abilities of the animators to put on quite a visual show. Some adaptations may be notable for their music, their acting, but this one is a wonderful version for its spellbinding and brilliant visuals. And finally, A Christmas Carol 2019. A few things here. Do watch this version to get a fully well-rounded grasp of every part of this tale, including the extremely dark themes. Do not watch it when you are in a good holiday mood and want something delightful to watch with your family. It opens with a young man who every Christmas urinates on Marley's grave, with Marley waking up 6 feet under and not yet at peace. We learn Marley has a job to do, and it's quite a doozy. He had better convince Scrooge to change his ways and redeem himself. Only then could Marley get peace. This will probably be the darkest version you will ever watch, as it goes into gruesome detail why Scrooge, played here by Guy Pearce, was the way he was, which horrible things he experienced in childhood, his relationships with his father and sister, and experiences of abuse at school. Their horror themes, abuse, blackmail, and even children dying on screen. Scrooge witnesses this past and witnesses the tragedies that were caused because of his penny pinching and absolutely not OSHA-approved work conditions of his mines, which at one day collapsed and killed horses, miners, many of whom were children. This version is one of the versions that really go into detail of the reasons why Scrooge turned into who he was. In that way, we can see possibly one of the starkest contrasts when he redeems himself. This may be one of the largest roles of Mrs. Cratchit, who shows actually some paranormal activity of her own as she senses Scrooge's presence in her home when he visits the Cratchits during Christmas present. Interestingly, Scrooge does not beg for forgiveness and does not wish for everyone to love him at the end of this version. He just wants to change the future, but he finally admits that he was so horrible as to not even deserve a redemption. It didn't matter what happened to him, or to his legacy or his burial without even a stone. He only asked whatever would hear him above, that Tiny Tim be allowed to live. And it's because of this request that breaks Scrooge free of his ghostly torments, and he is finally allowed to be free, to be back to Christmas morning, and to live up to his word. Since you've watched this video so far to learn who the best Scrooge is, I better make sure this video isn't clickbait. I think it's Michael Caine in Muppet Christmas Carol, with many close runner-ups, including Alastair Sim and George C. Scott. That's of course subjective. Maybe next year I'll think it's a different one. So who do you think is the best Scrooge? Or maybe you're waiting for me to get to your favorite version that I missed. So tell me, what did I miss? Tell me in the comments who you think the best Scrooge is. Until then, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us everyone.
Merry Christmas!
God bless us.
God bless us, everyone.
Intelligent boy.